It's time to laugh, to win, and to live the thrill of the action.
Hey, baby, let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. What the hell's going on out here?
No idea what's going on, but I am excited.
Every pick, every play, every game-changing moment.
Unbelievable!
This is You Better You Bet, brought to you by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
And it's a great day to be alive wherever you are, even if your team's been eliminated from the NFL playoffs. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos today here on You Better You Bet. Of course, you've got us here on Westwood One Sports. Inside the Westwood One Sports app, I believe we're still streaming today on YouTube, youtube.com/thecostos. Even though Nick is off today, we have got you covered. Obviously, we had the final game of Wild Card Weekend last night. The only one that didn't give us a little flutter in our chest and think maybe this thing's going to be tight at the end. I guess Sunday night's Chargers-Patriots game failed to deliver in that regard as well, but certainly it got sideways and out of control fast in Pittsburgh between the Texans and my Pittsburgh Steelers last night. We will get into what it looks like going forward for those Pittsburgh Steelers in a good bit of detail today. Also, the rest of the playoff field, the divisional round is now set. Frank Schwab of Yahoo Sports is going to join us exactly 1 hour from now to talk about angles and storylines in each of those four games, Saturday and Sunday. We got to talk college football because there is news on the field and off the field. Obviously on the field, a national championship game to be played in 6 days in Miami as the Hoosiers will try to win effectively a road game at Hard Rock Stadium against the underdog Miami Hurricanes. Brooks Austin, the film guy and recruiting director at SI, will join us in the third and final hour here. We'll be all over the place making sure you need to know or have everything you should say you need to know. I have had 4 hours of sleep, people. I did a Steelers post-game show, got up and now, bang, right back in it. Happy to be here, though. Make sure you follow me on social media at @TheChrisMack. Filling in for Nick Costos today. Let's get to the biggest 5 stories of the day. Right off the top, the high 5.
5.
The Mike Tomlins of the world, Matt LaFleur's of the world. Those are just two that kind of I played for. And when I first got in the league, there wouldn't be conversation about whether those guys were on the hot seat, but the way that the league is covered now and the way that there's snap decisions and the validity given to the Twitter experts and all the, experts on TV now who make it seem like they know what the hell they're talking about. To me, that's an absolute joke.
It's an absolute joke to Aaron Rodgers to have Mike Tomlin's job security called into question, but to those of us idiot experts on TV and radio, it makes perfect sense to ask what the future holds in Pittsburgh. And we're going to dive into this in great detail a couple times in today's show, including with Mark Caballi, Steelers correspondent for the Pat McAfee Show, my good friend who hosts the Caballi and Mac podcast with me, which, as I mentioned, we were up till 2 a.m. doing last night, talking about this team and where it goes. And the question is, if after 7 consecutive playoff losses and 9 years, 9 times, Mrs. Bueller, 9 years without a postseason victory, can Steelers owner Art Rooney II finally bring himself to have that very difficult but very necessary conversation with Mike Tomlin that he needs to have? And the framework is laid to make this a mutual parting of ways, a conscious uncoupling, if you were Gwyneth Paltrow. The groundwork is laid for that to be the case. Mike Tomlin has 1 year left on his deal. And the Steelers have to make a decision before March on whether they want to add any more years onto the end of that deal based on the way it's structured. It's time for Art Rooney II to talk to Mike Tomlin about not getting that extension. Sorry, Mike, you're going to have to coach for your job in 2026, which makes the decision on Mike Tomlin's part very simple. Do I want to go out in my 20th season as the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers and prove that I still got it. I still got answers to the questions. Or, if you're Mike Tomlin, do you look Art Rooney II in the eye, shake his hand, and say, thank you, Mr. Rooney, for everything, but I can't be a lame duck. I can't play quarterback roulette for one more year. I think I'm going to go hang out on a set in L.A., sit at a desk next to Gronk and Strahan with my buddy Jay Glazer a few feet away, and make a boatload of money for spinning some of those fantastic phrases that I turned during my weekly press conferences. Because that's what the option should be for Mike Tomlin after becoming this generation's version of Marvin Lewis. And let's not get it twisted. That's what Mike Tomlin has become. He has become this generation's Marvin Lewis. My wife, who consumes football only via osmosis, when I sit there and watch Red Zone for 12 hours every Sunday, every fall, for 18 weeks, even knows that being tied with Marvin Lewis is bad. She sent me a screenshot last night of that leaderboard that was posted on the screen last night. Marvin Lewis, 7 consecutive playoff losses, and then bang, Mike Tomlin right there. Right ahead of Marty Schottenheimer, who, by the way, got fired after 6 consecutive playoff losses after going 12-4. Jim Mora playoffs was in there as well after his tenure in Indianapolis. 6 consecutive playoff losses. You can be good. You can be damn good. And you can still not be the guy for the job anymore. Mike Tomlin's going to be a great head coach if he decides to coach somewhere else. But it has run its course in Pittsburgh. And the Rooney family, who dread the idea, it breaks their heart, the idea of firing a head coach. They haven't had to do it in half a century. More than that. My voice cracked. That's how long it's been since the Pittsburgh Steelers have fired a head coach. They can save some face here, not be the team that fired Mike Tomlin, but be the team that made it so distasteful for Mike Tomlin to stick around that he had to move on. And that's the only option in front of the Rooney family and the Pittsburgh Steelers organization right now. As I mentioned, we'll get into it in greater detail in less than 20 minutes with Steelers insider Mark Cavalli. Next.
4.
He's shoved across. They'll go ahead and take the touchdown as again Reggie Gilliam rides right behind him, and the Bills are back in front with a minute to go.
Josh Allen's touchdown run that put the Bills ahead and won the game in Jacksonville this weekend. I've come around, though, because that play came immediately after a 9-yard tush push. I've come around. I fought on behalf of it for a long time, but I can't in good conscience do it anymore. It's time to get the tush push out of the game. And ironically enough, it's going to be a team that voted for banning it a year ago, running it to bastardized perfection on Sunday afternoon, that led me to finally throw my hands up and say, enough is enough. What are we doing? This ain't football. It's rugby. It's 3 offensive linemen picking up Josh Allen and carrying him 9 yards down the field. Yes, rugby was the game 150 years ago, and football evolved from that. I get it. But the forward pass was legalized 120 years ago. And when it was, dudes were wearing leather helmets and horsehair stuffed shoulder pads. But people are no longer dying from rugby-like scrums at the line of scrimmage as they were in 1905. Teddy Roosevelt's got to be rolling over in his grave. Look it up, kids. He was the president. He said you got to fix football or else it's going to be made illegal. Not to mention Don Coryell and every coach over the past century who worked on turning the game from 3 yards in a cloud of dust into something resembling what we have now that's actually entertaining. Look, I love a nice duo block or a pulling guard getting outside and squashing little track stars in the opposing secondary. That's football. But that's not what we saw in Jacksonville. Oh, that was an abomination. And when the tush push does get banned this offseason, it has to happen now, doesn't it? You can thank Sean McDermott and the Buffalo Bills for putting the final nail in the coffin on Sunday afternoon. Next.
3.
I think that the move to 12 was really well timed. There's some clunkiness to it because the model was introduced, remember, in 2021, and that was before we expanded with Oklahoma and Texas, before the Big Ten. There's been a domino effect. And we were slow to adapt in real time because we were slow to accept the 12-team idea. And I was part of the group that introduced 12. I think 12 was right. I think it was done at the right time. When we've talked as a league, we think the move to 16 is the next right step.
That's Greg Sankey, SEC commissioner on the Rich Eisen show a few weeks ago. The two most powerful people in college football now have the future of the playoff in the palms of their hands. Sankey and Tony Petitti, Big Ten commissioner, have 10 days to figure out if they want to tear it up and start it all over again. Do they want to expand the CFP to 16 teams, create more games, which means more money, especially for their conferences and their conferences' programs, and figure out just how much of the pie they want to share with everybody else? But do not get it twisted. This is not based on parity at the highest levels of college football because we have Indiana and Miami in the national championship game. No. This is about, hey, how many more games can we add? And how many of those other teams do we have to have in the mix? This is the Big Ten and the SEC fighting over lots and lots of zeros, and everybody else just sitting there saying, "Thank you, sir. May I have another?" That wasn't a bad British accent, if I do say so myself. That's what this is about. It's about the Power Two lining their pockets and stuffing the vaults of their programs, and how they can do it while guaranteeing as little inclusion for the other guys as possible. I don't hate the idea of 16, but the idea of 24 that's also being floated out there, when are we going to finish the season? In February, or are we going to start it in July? How are we going to make that work? The CFP might have a little bit more room for growth, but we're 2 years into the current model. Rather than chasing the dollar signs and the zeros, let's take a step back, let this thing play out for another year or two, and see if maybe more parity actually puts some power back in the hands of people not named Sankey and Petitti. Again, we'll talk to Brooks Austin at 11:20 Eastern, not just about the national championship game, but about the future of the CFP as well. Next.
2.
I was trying to get him off the field, because we were about to punt, and that was really it. So I love AJ. I think he knows how I feel about him. I have a special relationship with him. We've probably went through every emotion you can possibly have together. We've laughed together. We've cried together. We've yelled at each other. We're both emotional. I was trying to get him off the field, and you never want. That happens in this game. That happens in this game, but I love him.
I love him. When you say you love somebody that much, Nick, do you really love AJ Brown? We laughed together. We cried together. We watched some Hallmark Christmas movies together over the holidays. We have a great relationship. Really. It's time for change in Philly. I said it over the weekend here on Westwood One Sports, but the Eagles' inability to score even 20 points was going to be their kryptonite this postseason. And it showed up at home, no less, against a 49ers defense that's been bludgeoned and bloodied by injuries all year. Yet there the Eagles were, with the game in their hands multiple times at the link, dropping footballs in crucial situations, especially A.J. Brown. And that's why it's not Nick Sirianni that has to go, just a year removed from a Super Bowl title. It's not Jalen Hurts. And simply moving on from Kevin Patullo, their offensive coordinator, isn't going to be enough. It's time for the Philadelphia Eagles to make some major moves. That starts with detaching themselves from A.J. Brown. This is not a unique take. I heard multiple people say it yesterday. Brown's a fantastic wide receiver when he's engaged, but he's also a massive distraction that created a sense of detachment in the Eagles locker room all year, and that sense of detachment extended into the offense and onto the field all too often this season. It was bounced around by some people as a rumor before the trade deadline back in November, and now the Eagles actually need to step up and do it. Get what you can for A.J. Brown while he's still an elite wide receiver in the NFL, despite those drops on third down Sunday, and get the toxicity and the appeasement out of the game plan and the locker room before a new OC has to come in and deal with it and learn to placate A.J. Brown. Don't craft an offense to satisfy A.J. Brown when every single thing about your offense should work off of Saquon Barkley. Trade A.J. Brown. That's step one. And as for that new OC, you want change. Real change. Want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. Hire Mike McDaniel as your offensive coordinator. You want some drama in Philly? Mike McDaniel busting it down the school kill? Oh, yes. Let's get nuts in Philly. Next.
1.
But do I think the Packers are making the right call by potentially keeping Matt LaFleur and signing him to an extension? I do. And I didn't think it would happen.
Nick Costos, my good friend, who usually hosts this show. You Better You Bet right here on Westwood One Sports. Yesterday, I was listening to the show, and I heard Nick talking about Matt LaFleur's future in Green Bay and how the Packers have to just do the smart thing, right? Do the smart thing and give LaFleur his extension. I don't know if it's that cut and dry, Nick. And you can argue and counterpoint based on whatever the Packers do or do not do in the coming days and weeks. But I don't think there's any way the Packers can get away with giving Matt LaFleur exactly what he wants. You can't get away, if you're the Packers, with giving LaFleur more than a 1-year Band-Aid extension on his current deal. That's what makes the most sense here. I understand Ed Policy, their new team president, he's just disgusted by the idea of a lame duck coaching staff. Okay, that's fine. Maybe you like some of the stuff Matt LaFleur has done. Maybe, like Aaron Rodgers said up at the top of the show a couple minutes ago, we're all too quick. All of these fake experts on social media and sports talk radio and TV. Maybe we're too quick to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. But are you telling me that what you saw from Matt LaFleur down the stretch this year, especially those 2 games in 3 weeks at Soldier Field, you're telling me that you're supremely confident in that guy, supremely confident enough to give him multiple years and lots of money? I wouldn't be. No way, no how. When's the last time the Packers won the NFC North? It's when that Rodgers guy was their quarterback. I could not, in good conscience, give Matt LaFleur more than 1 additional year on the end of his deal. I'm not telling you to fire the guy. I'm telling you to make it clear that he's on a ticking clock and he better figure this stuff out sooner rather than later. And he better find a way to cure the meltdowns against your biggest rival, the team who you stomped a hole in for the better part of 2 decades, who all of a sudden has your number at the most consequential moments in games, in the most consequential games. You can't let Matt LaFleur just walk in and sign some multi-year extension based off the way the end of this season went. 1 more year on the end of this year's deal. That's what you give him. And if he doesn't like that, fine. Go coach the Falcons, Matt. Go ahead. We'll go hire John Harbaugh. Go to Arizona. Go somewhere else. Go melt down in the playoffs with somebody else's organization. But it's not going to happen here year after year after year after year, and there won't be any consequences. We'll talk about where the NFL offseason goes for those teams that are out of it at the top of the hour with Frank Schwab of Yahoo Sports, and obviously start to dive into the divisional round as well. The 4 matchups are set. Coming up in about 25 minutes, we'll get into the Texans specifically, because while the big story of the morning is what happens in Pittsburgh with the Steelers, we'd be losing the forest for the trees if we didn't acknowledge that the Texans defense went absolute bully ball last night in Pittsburgh and dominated the Pittsburgh Steelers, and asked ourselves whether they can do that again in Foxborough this weekend, and maybe even again after that. How far can defense carry the Texans, even with C.J. Stroud playing the way he did last night, which for the first 2.5, 3 quarters of the game was not very good. And without Nico Collins, we would think, going into Foxborough next weekend. But coming up next, back into the Steelers. And we'll ask Mark Cabali, Steelers insider, how much change is actually going to happen in Pittsburgh. That's next here on Westwood One Sports. This is You Better You Bet.
which if he's let go, there'll be a lot of suitors knocking on his door for that as well.
Here's an interception for good measure. It's picked off by Bullock. And Rodgers is in his way, trying to make the tackle. Can't. And it's a touchdown, Texans.
Welcome back to You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
Icing on the cake for the Texans last night, a late pick six. They end up beating the Steelers 30-6. Largest home playoff loss for the Steelers in decades, if ever, maybe. And they are done. Is Aaron Rodgers done? Could Mike Tomlin be done? We'll get into all of that in just a moment with my good friend Mark Cabali, Steelers correspondent for the Pat McAfee Show, Steelers insider for the last quarter century. I'm making him sound old. He isn't. Don't worry. Just reshuffling the deck real quick here. We will get in-depth college football talk with Brooks Austin of the Film Guy Network coming up now at around 10:40 this morning here on You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports, inside the Westwood One Sports app. And we'll reshuffle things to make sure we get into absolutely everything you need to talk about this morning here on Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos this morning. He is the co-host with, well, me, of Cabali and Mack, which talks all things Pittsburgh sports, especially the Steelers. And as I mentioned, a Steelers insider for the last 25 years, Steelers correspondent for the Pat McAfee Show. Mark Cabali joins me now. Kaboom. It's only been about 7 hours since we last spoke to each other, so I'm sure you're very excited to get up and talk to me after being up late, breaking down what happened with the Steelers last night. Well, let's start there. What the hell happened last night?
Pretty much the same stuff that we've seen over the past 6 or 7 years in the playoffs. They just didn't live up to their capabilities. I mean, especially yesterday or last night. It got away from them pretty quickly, especially offensively, and they had their opportunities early in this game to really make a dent in it and have an opportunity to win the game. And a lot of the stuff that they've had issues with throughout the whole season just come flooding back all at once. I mean, you saw it with being able to stop the run with Woody Marks. You saw it with allowing some breakdowns in the secondary. You saw it with not being able to run the ball. Rodgers getting pressured. It was just like it was almost felt like to me that they patched things up with Band-Aids all throughout the season. And, you know, they got into the shower and took a shower and all those Band-Aids fell off and every wound was exposed. And it was a little bit uglier than it probably should have been with those 14 or 21 points or 20 points in the last 10 or 11 minutes. But make no mistake about it, they were just outmatched.
I now have a disturbing visual of Arthur Smith in the shower. Thank you for ruining my morning. I appreciate that. 0 for 6 on third downs in the first half. We're going to talk a lot about Rodgers and Tomlin over the next few days and weeks when we talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers. But what do you think the future holds for Arthur Smith, who we've already heard has interest from at least the Titans for a possible head coaching position?
Yeah, I don't think anything happens. I mean, after seeing what happened Monday night, I don't think he's number one on many people's list of a head coaching job here. If you're putting up 130 total yards or whatever it was, I just don't think that's a possibility. I think he comes back. He has 1 year left on his contract, and we know how the Steelers historically have let guys play out their contract. I mean, the only one they didn't was with Matt Canada, but they waited till November of the final year of his deal to let him go. So I don't think anything happens there. I think it's status quo from him. Comes back, and they just try to improve on which was at times a difficult year with not a ton of weapons, and the weapons that they did have, for some odd reason, they decided not to use them. So I don't think anything happens. I mean, it sounds like the Pittsburgh Steelers that we all know and love. Status quo, move forward, and just try to get better.
So, and I know we just talked about this at like 1 a.m. last night, you and I on our show, but I have to go back to this. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So, do you truly expect that, given their options, the Steelers will attempt to lure Aaron Rodgers back for another season and attempt to run it back another year with Tomlin and Rodgers?
I probably would, because 12 hours ago, I think you asked pretty much anybody associated of being a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, they would all have said, yes, we want Rodgers back. That's how important he's been to this organization this year. Not only the way he's played, he showed that he still has some left in the tank, but not only that, I think he reintroduced a culture that was been missing to this team over the past half a decade of how to win, or how to at least comport yourself during a season to have an opportunity to win. So I think, with what you have on your roster, and you have Mason Rudolph, Will Howard, Skylar Thompson, what there's potentially have in the draft, which is nobody is going to be a plug-and-play player at 21 or wherever they're picking. And the free agency market, not very rich with talent. You know what? Your best bet probably is having Aaron Rodgers come back for one more season. But a lot of things would have to happen, like we've talked about before. A lot of things. If you're Aaron Rodgers, you want to make sure, first of all, Mike Tomlin comes back, because he defends Mike Tomlin more than you do, Mac. Rodgers any chance he gets, so he loves him. He loves Arthur Smith, but I would want to make sure what's the plan too. Hey, I need some help here on offense a little bit. Are you going to get me a receiver too? Are you going to get me something else to be able to help me push this offense forward? If all those things end up working out, yes, I think he'll come back. If not, hey, I do find it interesting that every time he's been asked a question of if he wants to return to the Steelers, he hasn't really pushed back on the opportunity of playing somewhere else, which just seems like strange to me. But he did it again last night.
Yeah, I'm curious, though. Mark Cabali, Steelers Insider, is with us here on You Better You Bet. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos. I find it curious how Aaron Rodgers' decision affects what Mike Tomlin may or may not want to do, because I just wouldn't. If I were Mike Tomlin, I would not have the stomach for another year of quarterback roulette. Do you think he does?
Honestly, he hasn't had to deal with a quarterback roulette for 15 of his 19 years or 18 years. This is just a recent development since 2001 that they've been running through quarterbacks like people, run through underwear at times. So
if you're only
changing
your underwear once a year, Mark, then we need to have a side conversation later.
Hey, you don't worry about my underwear. I don't think it bothers him. I don't think it matters to him. I think he uses it as a challenge. And maybe Mason Rudolph does give him a better chance. Maybe there is somebody out there. Maybe the old con artist has something up his sleeve that can bring in a quarterback. I don't know if I want a guy like Kyler Murray or anybody to that matter. You might as well just keep with what you have right there. But you still got a pretty good semblance of a defense, which I think is pretty much a sure bet that Terrell Austin won't be back there, DC. Bring in somebody else there who's had more success than Terrell Austin. Terrell Austin failed in Cincinnati and Detroit, I believe. Didn't do much better here. And nicest guy in the world, but nicest guys in the world don't win you games, and doesn't have $160 million defenses that you turn into giving up 400 yards to C.J. Stroud and Woody Marks and Christian Kirk. So I think there will be some changes like that, but I don't think he cares about playing as you say, at the quarterback roulette. I think he's arrogant enough to think that whoever he puts out there, they can win. even though they
So-
haven't.
Has he convinced everyone else in the organization, and I mean by everyone else, up to and including the owner, Art Rooney II, that he still has the answers to the test? Because this is 9 years without a playoff win, 7 consecutive playoff losses. It ties Marvin Lewis for the longest such streak. Do the people who matter in the Steelers organization, which really is just one person above Mike Tomlin, the owner, Art Rooney, does Rooney believe that Tomlin still has the answers to the questions? And will he get an extension on his deal in March, or do they let him hang out to dry as a lame duck?
You know, if you really want to move on from Mike Tomlin without making it look like you got rid of him, I mean, you got an easy out. Just say, hey, we're not picking up that option. Is now in your court, Mike. Do you want to come back as the so-called lame duck coach for next year, or do you want to walk away thinking that you've at least earned an opportunity to have an extension and not play on a final year if you want to play hardball? But I don't think you can give him an extension at this point. It just looks bad in the court of public opinion here. A team that hasn't won a playoff game since 2016 season, and now you're just giving your head coach an extension just for what? So, I mean, if Art really wants to move on from him without moving on from him, you go there. You go down that route, and maybe that does the job. But other than that, I don't see that Art Rooney wants to be a part of removing Mike Tomlin from his position. Maybe, next year and the contract runs out and the mutual decision there might be something that is more plausible. But for him to come in and saying, okay, Mike, we need to have our end of the year talk. Hey, by the way, we don't need you anymore. We don't want you anymore. I just don't see that happening.
Mark, go get some sleep. It was a long night, and we'll definitely keep an eye out for what's going to happen next in Pittsburgh. We appreciate it, bud.
Yeah, I was napping until you just woke me up. So,
well, thanks for waking up for just a couple minutes. We appreciate it. Mark Cabali, Steelers insider, Steelers correspondent for the Pat McAfee Show. My good friend who also co-hosts the Cabali and Mac Show with me here in Pittsburgh, and we were up late with a post-game perspective on this thing. And I think that's what Mark just said there as he dismounted, which is the Steelers organization has a way to make it untenable for a coach of Mike Tomlin's tenure and stature to want to stick around. And they don't have to, quote unquote, fire Mike Tomlin. They can just come to a mutual agreement where Mike Tomlin doesn't want to coach as a lame duck. The Steelers don't want to give him an extension, and it leads to him walking away. We'll see how it plays out over the next few days, weeks, and months. We'll talk to Frank Schwab about what he would do if he were in charge in Pittsburgh from Yahoo Sports, and also look ahead to the divisional round with the Schwab at the top of the hour. Brooks Austin going to join us a little bit more than an hour from now as well to talk college ball. But coming up next, can the Houston Texans use that bully ball formula and beat up the Patriots in Foxborough the way they beat up the Steelers in Pittsburgh last night? Chris Mack in for Nick Costos on You Better You Bet right here on Westwood One Sports. That's next.
I got a feeling this line may grow in favor of Buffalo. I would not be surprised the Bills close as like a 2.5-point favorite. Again, given the assessment that I've gotten from a lot of people there in the Mile High City. The biggest issue for Denver, as we said, until we're blue in the face, just how sluggish they've been in the first half. I mean, they got to come out with guns a-blazing. They got to come out popping. They got to come out firing. They got to be efficient. They got to score some points because the Buffalo Bills got to be able to rack some points. And, I think you hit it right on the head. Can R.J. Harvey be that guy on the ground? The area you can take advantage of the Buffalo Bills is in the trenches. They're number 24 since week 12 in rush EPA defense. So maybe Bo Nix and his scrambling ability, he can make some chunk gains in that area. But, yeah, the back end of that Bills defense is stiff and stout and unrelenting. I think the Bills will have an advantage. Josh Allen is genius, his brilliance, despite how awesome that Broncos defense is. He is going to push him. He's going to test him. And Khalil Shakir, given his savvy route running ability, is a guy that can certainly do some work and some dirty work underneath. Even if James Cook doesn't arrive again, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes out and has another sub 60, 65-yard day. So I think Josh Allen is going to be too much. And I just don't trust Denver to start off hot. I don't.
Third down and 12. Rodgers, time runs out. Ball is out. It's picked up by the Texans and Sheldon Rankins. And he is in for a touchdown.
This is You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
The Texans defense came and did exactly what a lot of people expected them to do in Pittsburgh last night. Joe Buck on the call on ESPN and ABC last night on the finale to Wild Card Weekend on Monday Night Football. First home Monday night loss for the Pittsburgh Steelers, by the way, since 1991. First road playoff victory in Texans franchise history. The divisional round is now set. I got a question about what the Texans did last night and how much farther they can go with it in just a second. But BetMGM players, you're going to get on any sport a parlay boost token to start the new year off, right? Use your parlay boost token inside the BetMGM app right now. Find your parlay, put it together, any sports, and then activate the token. You win your wager that was made with that token. You get extra winnings with that odds boost token. Score a bigger payout. Download the BetMGM app today, and please gamble responsibly. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos here on Westwood One Sports, inside the Westwood One Sports app, and streaming live on YouTube at The Costos. YouTube.com/@TheCostos. Nick will be back tomorrow, but we've got a lot to talk about today. We'll get back into that conversation about the Steelers and the future of Mike Tomlin just a little more than an hour from now. Brooks Austin will join us in less than an hour, right around 10:40 Eastern, of the Film Guy Network, recruiting director at SI as well, to talk about the national championship game that is now 6 days away between Indiana and Miami, and the possible realignment / expansion of the college football playoff that's once again being debated, a possible jump to 16 teams, maybe even 24. We'll get into that as they're running out of time to come to a decision in regards to the structure of the CFP. Frank Schwab of Yahoo Sports to talk about the divisional round matchups at the top of the hour as well. But I don't know, can the Texans do this again Sunday afternoon in Foxborough against the New England Patriots? Can they do to Drake May and the Patriots what they did to Aaron Rodgers and the Pittsburgh Steelers? For the first half last night, first 2.5 quarters even, the Texans were generating pressure, but they weren't getting home on Aaron Rodgers necessarily. Now, obviously, as you heard on the call from Buck there at the top of the segment, they ended up getting home. And it wasn't just the usual suspects. It wasn't just Daniil Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. The push was coming up the middle. You heard the Sheldon Rankins fumble recovery and return for the touchdown, the scoop and score there. The entire front seven did a job on the Pittsburgh Steelers last night. The secondary did their job on the receivers. Nobody was open downfield for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the Texans looked like what they had looked like through most of the back half of the season. The best defense in the NFL. And comes back around. When I was filling in for Nick here on You Better You Bet a week ago, I said there's no thing your drunk uncle likes to remind you of while watching a game more than after a few pops, few whiskey sours, whatever his drink of choice may be, your uncle leans over and uncomfortably close says to you in almost a whisper, yeah, defense wins championships, though. And that may actually be the case this year. Because when you look at the quarterbacks that we have left, Allen, Stafford, May, Caleb, does Caleb fit into that mix? No. It's Stafford and Allen right now are the two that you look at and say, okay, those are Super Bowl caliber quarterbacks. Allen hasn't been there yet, but he's an MVP. Stafford should be this year. And without a litany of elite quarterbacks left in these playoffs, maybe it's an opportunity for the defenses to win a championship. Now, I would not be the least bit surprised if we get that from New England's defense against C.J. Stroud next Sunday, too, because Stroud looked uncomfortable at best last night. Ended up making a few throws. I mean, you can't argue the fact that it was an absolutely huge game for Christian Kirk. He stepped up when Nico Collins was either blanketed by Joey Porter Jr. or after Collins left the game. But if the Patriots have a week, nearly a week, to plan for a Texans offense without Nico Collins, I don't see the Texans generating on the ground against the New England Patriots Sunday afternoon what they did against the Pittsburgh Steelers last night. And a lot of those chunks of yardage came on the first touchdown drive for Houston, and then late as they were running out the clock, but they still did generate that. C.J. Stroud cannot have another game like he did last night. 4 fumbles, 2 of them lost. Messy with the shotgun snaps. had trouble handling the football. I don't know what was causing that for C.J. Stroud. If you would have told me it was his first ever playoff start, I'd have said, oh, okay, this is how a quarterback making his first playoff start on the road in a hostile environment. He might have some nerves, some butterflies, some jitters. Okay. C.J. Stroud isn't a guy making his first playoff start. So that part still needs to be resolved. And I don't know if the Texans can go into Foxborough with C.J. Stroud playing like that and steal a game from the New England Patriots. But I do think if he gets it together and the Texans want to muddy up the game again, as they did last night, and if their defense can force Drake May to make some mistakes, the massive difference here, obviously, is that Drake May can make things happen with his legs that Aaron Rodgers still has only vague memories of when he goes on an ayahuasca trip. Rodgers cannot move anymore. Certainly not the way he did in his prime, and certainly not the way Drake May can move now. So can the Texans get to Drake May, force him into some mistakes? I think it's possible. I don't know if it's probable. I don't think I'd bet a side on this game. The total, though, at 40.5, I'm going under. You saw the Patriots with 3 field goals before they finally punched one in late against the Chargers. And you saw the Texans with just 2 offensive touchdowns last night. So between the two of them, they scored 3 touchdowns in their wild card games. I don't think we get to 40. So that would be my bet on this game. But I think what's much more interesting is whether the Texans can actually bully their way to an AFC championship game. There are still some really good defenses left in these playoffs. The Texans, obviously. Denver, obviously. Seattle. That I think can carry quarterbacks in the case of C.J. Stroud, Bo Nix, Sam Darnold, a round or 2 farther in the playoffs than they would ordinarily be expected to go. But on the road at New England, if C.J. Stroud looks like even a whisper of what he was last night, it won't be good enough. It just won't. Coming up, we will dive into all 4 of those divisional round matchups with Frank Schwab of Yahoo Sports, who covers the NFL. Ask him if he has any bets that he likes early in the week, and we'll ask him. We'll put you in Art Rooney II's shoes. Frank, what would you do with Mike Tomlin and Aaron Rodgers? That's next here on You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
I got a feeling this line may grow in favor of Buffalo. I would not be surprised the Bills close as like a 2.5-point favorite. Again, given the assessment that I've gotten from a lot of people there in the Mile High City. The biggest issue for Denver, as we said, until we're blue in the face, just how sluggish they've been in the first half. I mean, they got to come out with guns a-blazing. They got to come out popping. They got to come out firing. They got to be efficient. They got to score some points because the Buffalo Bills got to be able to rack some points. And, I think you hit it right on the head. Can RJ Harvey be that guy on the ground? And the area you can take advantage of the Buffalo Bills is in the trenches. They're number 24 since week 12 in rush EPA defense. So maybe Bo Nix and his scrambling ability, he can make some chunk gains in that area. But yeah, the back end of that Bills defense is stiff and stout and unrelenting. I think the Bills will have an advantage. Josh Allen is genius, his brilliance, despite how awesome that Broncos defense is. He is going to push him. He's going to test him. And Khalil Shakir, given his savvy route running ability, is a guy that can certainly do some work and some dirty work underneath. Even if James Cook doesn't arrive again, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes out and has another like sub 60, 65-yard day. So I think Josh Allen is going to be too much. And I just don't trust Denver to start off hot. I don't.
It's time to laugh, to win, and to live the thrill of the action.
Hey, baby, let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. What the hell's going on out here?
No idea what's going on, but I am excited.
Every pick, every play, every game-changing moment. Unbelievable! This is You Better You Bet, brought to you by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
I feel like somebody needs to give me the Brian Dennehy speech in Rambo. It's over, Johnny. It's over. Steelers, dog walked by the Texans last night, and they are done. Can the Texans replicate that in Foxborough? Chris Mack in for Nick Costos here on You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports. Always inside the Westwood One Sports app, and you can watch the show on YouTube. Go to youtube.com/TheCostos. Kostos at The Costos. Nick will be back tomorrow. Brooks Austin is going to join me a little more than a half hour from now to talk college ball, national championship game, Miami, Indiana, possible CFP expansion, all that fun stuff. And we'll get back into a deep dive on where the Pittsburgh Steelers go from here 1 hour from now. Lucky enough now, though, to be joined by Frank Schwab, covers the NFL for Yahoo Sports. Morning, Frank. How are you? And how surprised were you, or maybe unsurprised, that the Steelers went out with the whimper that they did last night to the hands of that Texans defense?
Yeah, I didn't get much right this weekend, but I did get that right because I just looked up. I was saying, how could the Steelers score against the Texans? I didn't mean it literally, though. I thought the Steelers would at least get one touchdown on the board. Nothing from them. And look, it's part of this is the Texans. The Texans defense is nasty. That's a championship quality defense. Really, really good. But part of it is the Steelers. This has just been a mediocre team all year. I really don't know how they got the 10 wins. I looked at this team midseason and was like, they are going to fade and fade hard. They didn't. And that's a credit to them, credit to Mike Tomlin and all that. But they were going to get exposed eventually in the playoffs. If it wasn't this round, it was the next round. So not terribly surprised. But yes, the way they got just beat up on offense was a little surprising to that extent.
What should their plan be? Forget Tomlin for now and what his future may or may not hold, but I'll put you in the Pittsburgh Steelers front office for just a couple of minutes. What is the plan for a team that has been playing quarterback roulette for the past half decade in an offseason where there just aren't a lot of great options out there?
Right, and that's a problem. Any quarterback who's available is usually not an optimal selection. Yeah, you could go get Kirk Cousins. Where does that get you? Malik Willis, maybe he's the man. Maybe he's going to be the next great quarterback to come off the scrap heap and revive his career. I don't know that you can depend on that. You don't have a draft pick where you're going to get somebody, especially in this class, where you feel really good about it. Why they passed on Jackson Dart, I'll never know. That was a ready-made pick for them, and they should have made it. The Giants did. They should feel pretty good about it, too. So I don't know what they do. I honestly think we're to the point with the Steelers where they just need to rebuild. It's not just the quarterback. It is the defense is really, really old, and it looked apart many, many times this season. I don't know how it gets better next year. On offense, they just don't have a lot. DK Metcalf is fine, but he's not carrying an offense by himself. I think it's just to the point where the Steelers need to say, we just need to go in a completely different direction. We need to tear it down a little bit to build back up. And I think but I don't think they want to do that. They're going to look at it and say, we just won a division. We won 10 games. We're not the type of team that's just going to voluntarily take a 4-win season. We're the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I think they're just stuck. They're stuck in the middle, and that's been the problem. They've been stuck in the middle for years and years now.
Yeah, it's to folks who are in different markets, your Arizonas, your Carolinas, teams where winning is not an every year thing. It more jumps up and bites you by surprise sometimes. It's hard to accept the fact that a team would want to walk away from a relationship with a perennial winner like Mike Tomlin, who's never had a losing season. But in those places like Pittsburgh, New England, Green Bay, where winning is the bare minimum and it's got to go another level or two higher, there is this standard that Tomlin has not met. He's tied with Marvin Lewis now for the most consecutive playoff losses at 7. And I'm curious, I'll put you, again, you're in the Steelers front office, so I'll promote you, Frank. I'll put you all the way up in the owner's suite at 3400 South Water Street and ask you, what would you do with Mike Tomlin? He's got a year left on his deal. He's got an option that needs to be decided if they're going to pick up for 2027 by March. Would you give him the option to coach it out as a lame duck and let him then make the decision if he wants to move on or not?
I think I would just start over. And it goes back to the rebuild. I think if you want to rebuild, just clean it out. Just start over. You don't want you don't want necessarily Mike Tomlin going through that. Mike Tomlin doesn't want to go through it. He's got other options. He's a great, great coach. I've always said this about the Steelers. Their next coach is very, very, very unlikely to be as good as Mike Tomlin has been. Really, that's the truth. Like he's got a Hall of Fame resume if you compare it to other guys in the Hall of Fame. But sometimes there's just a change needs to be made. So if I was guiding the Steelers here, I would just say we're getting further and further away from the goal of being a Super Bowl contender. Yeah, we're winning games and not having losing seasons and barely making the playoffs, and that's great. That's fine. But we're not close to being a Super Bowl contender. So we're starting the whole thing over. And you sit down to Mike Tomlin and say, how do we do this the right way? Because we're not just firing you 12 hours after after a playoff loss. That you deserve better than that. I think it's a mutual parting of ways. And then Mike Tomlin could go. Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh then would be the 1 and 2 candidates on the entire market. If Mike Tomlin wants to keep coaching, he can have any open job he wants, unless Harbaugh takes it first. So I think this could work out for everybody. And Andy Reid with the Eagles type of situation, the comparison everybody has made, I think that can happen here with the Steelers and Tomlin. But I just think it's run its course in Pittsburgh. This whole group with Tomlin. What do you run it back to try to win 9 games next year? Like, I don't know that that's really a goal anybody has in Pittsburgh.
Frank Schwab covers the NFL for Yahoo Sports. Love his insights, and he's with us here on You Better You Bet. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos today. And then you've got Texans fans who are waking up this morning in Houston saying, hey, great, everybody talk about the Steelers and what happens with them. What about us? We just dominated them on the road. First road victory in franchise history. We survived our quarterback with the drop season. Our defense was as dominant as it's been all year. How far can the Texans ride that if C.J. Stroud cleans up some of the mistakes from last night?
Oh, they can absolutely go to Super Bowl. I mean, that defense, look, I'm based in Colorado. I watched the 2015 Broncos very closely. They had a quarterback who had a big name, but had a 69 passer rating that year, and they made a Super Bowl, won a Super Bowl, because that defense was awesome. You can still win that way in the NFL. It's not easy. It's not preferred, but you can do it. And I think the Texans defense is the best unit left in the playoffs. It was the best unit in the playoffs when we started the playoffs. It's absolutely awesome. I mean, for everybody who's saying, oh, Josh Allen, this is his year, he's going to make a Super Bowl. I watched that game. I think it was week 12. It was a Thursday night. They destroyed Josh Allen in that game. They sacked him like 8 times. This Houston Texans team is really good. Now, the one thing I will say is losing Nico Collins, and I don't anticipate he's going to play next week, that's massive for them because he needs something on offense. He need a little bit, and Nico Collins is by far and away their best offensive player. Not having him for the next round and maybe beyond, who knows? That it didn't look great. I just wonder if that's kind of their fatal flaw right now. But yes, all their games are going to be, 12-10 the rest of the way, maybe. I think it win that way. So, yeah, the Texans can make a Super Bowl. I have no doubt about that.
Did you wake up like me and first thing you looked at when you saw the total coming out on Houston, New England was, oh, okay, you're going to give me something in the 40s? Yeah, I'll take the under before that thing dives any farther.
Yeah, right. I am so regretful that I literally forgot to bet the Pittsburgh Steelers team total under yesterday because I thought about it. And then I just, during the game, I'm like, oh, wait, I forgot to do that. Yeah. So, yes, look, the Patriots and the Patriots defense, all of a sudden, where did that come from last week? It's not like the Patriots defense is coming off a bad game and they're just going to allow C.J. Stroud to shred them. They looked really good against Justin Herbert and that Chargers offense. So I think it was absolutely a defensive game. And I mean, Drake May's had a great season. He's a really, really good player. I don't think he's just going to go out there and put 30 on the Texans. I don't foresee that being a possibility. So yeah, I think it's going to be a really low scoring game.
The other side of the AFC bracket, the Bills going to Denver. Look, I get it. The Broncos defense is really, really good. And Sean Payton seems to know just what buttons to push and when to push them. I still have my questions about Bo Nix. Is that fair to have, or does he get an opportunity here against a Bills defense where the Broncos could go out and they could win a game 28-24 if they have to against Buffalo?
I think they could. I mean, the offense has been really inconsistent, but there are moments when you say, all right, that looks pretty good. It wasn't against the Chargers week 18, I'll tell you that, but like everybody likes to talk about their Giants win like it was a massive fluke, and it was in many ways. They still did put up 33 points in a quarter. Like, this isn't an offense where you're just like, there's just no way. The Steelers offense, there's no way they're going to be. The Broncos can move the ball. They can score points. It just comes and goes for them. Let's put it that way. I like them a lot, actually. I think they've been underrated all season. And a lot of it goes back to that Giants game. For some reason, I think people watched that game, saw the highlights, whatever, and just decided they're on the spot. Well, the Broncos are a lucky team. They're not that good. I don't buy that. Yes, they've won a lot of close games. That's usually an indicator of a lucky team, but that's the way this team is built. They're built, play defense, have Sean Payton manage a game in the fourth quarter, one of the best coaches in the NFL, and that gives them an edge, kind of like the Chiefs in 2024. And so I just think they've been underrated all year. People wrote them off as a lucky team. They won 14 games. They're at home this week in the altitude. The Buffalo Bills have a short week. Like, there's a lot going against the Bills here. Josh Allen has like 17 different injuries after that Jacksonville game. I actually like the Broncos. I get it. Josh Allen could carry this Bills team all the way to a championship, of course. Like he's the best quarterback on the planet right now. But I just think this Broncos team has been overlooked all year. And I'm honestly not sure exactly why that is, because all they've done, they've won, what is it, 14 or last 15 games? They're really good football.
Yeah. As an aside to the Bills' win in Jacksonville, do you think the 9-yard pickup of Josh Allen by the offensive line and carrying him down the field to the goal line like he was a bag of groceries, does that finally get us a ban? I have not been anti-tush push the last couple of years. I've just said, hey, if you can run it, and if you can't defend it, figure out a way to defend it. But does this finally get us over the line for banning the tush push this offseason?
It might. And if you remember, one of the teams that was against the tush push was the Bills. They didn't want that thing in there, probably because they don't want Josh Allen to get hurt. But yeah, I think, look, the argument I've always settled on, and I have been, if you stop it, it's perfectly legal. Go ahead and stop it. If you're going to stop plays that are unstoppable, then Derrick Henry can't run off left tackle anymore because we can't stop that. Right. It gets silly at times. But the one argument is, look, the left wing lock in a neutral zone trap in the NHL. They said the Devils in the mid '90s. They said, you've done it great. You've kind of ruined the game. It's not aesthetically pleasing. We're having this out of the game. The shift in baseball. People said, well, that was really smart. You didn't do anything wrong, but it's not good for the game. It's not good for the watchability of the game. And so we're getting that out of here. And I think the same thing for tush push. When people line up for the tush push, you kind of roll your eyes and say, this is really not a great play. It's not a competitive play. Why is this in here? I think that's ultimately what gets that out. Instead of just making up something out of thin air, like saying oh, we're going to have injuries, even though we haven't yet. We're going to have injuries with this play. That's never been a great argument.
Yeah, I saw that play on that final drive by Buffalo, and I said, what are we doing at this point?
Yeah,
the offensive linemen are literally carrying Josh Allen down the field. I want to talk NFC, obviously, since we've got you here. Frank Schwab of Yahoo Sports with us on You Better You Bet. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos on Westwood One Sports. How did the Niners survive George Kittle's absence? They got through it in Philly because the Eagles' offense is their own unmitigated disaster, but this is on the road at Seattle against that defense. I mean, you can get Christian McCaffrey 35 touches, I guess, and say a prayer or two. But after their performance against them in Week 18, I don't know what the hope is or what the avenue is to stealing a victory for the Niners.
There is one avenue, and his name is Kyle Shanahan. He's your coach of the year. I don't even know why this is a debate anymore. It blows me away when Kyle Shanahan's not the obvious coach of the year. Why is coach of the year so broken where we have to give it to a new coach who, hey, he did so much better than Matt Eberflus? Well, okay. The bar was pretty low. Yeah, you should hop over that. Well, you were so much better than Jared Mayo was last year. All right. Well, who was the best coach in the NFL this season? It was Kyle Shanahan, period. Hard stop. I can't believe they're in the position they are after dealing with the injuries they dealt with. And so I sit here and say, yeah, the 49ers have no chance. They are going to get blown out by the Seahawks team without George Kittle. They got dominated at home by a really, really good defense in Week 18. There's no chance for them. But I've been saying that all year about the 49ers. And Kyle Shanahan just keeps pulling rabbits out of his hat. Robert Saleh, too. Robert Saleh's had a great year as defensive coordinator. I don't know how he's doing it with that crew. They don't have much talent on that defense, but they always seem to make the plays they need to make to win games. So that's it. Can Kyle and Robert Saleh do this yet again? I can't give you a better answer than that because I don't think there is one. They're very, very overmatched right here as far as just manpower goes, but they've been proving everybody wrong all season.
Yeah, that 7.5 feels a little heavy, but just based on the way the Seahawks have played games this year, I would be tempted to pick up the 7.5 with the Niners and just hope for, like you said, some Kyle Shanahan magic. The other NFC divisional round game, Rams on the road at the Bears. I'm done counting the Bears out, Frank. I'm done. And I could watch 55 minutes of a game and say, man, this Chicago offense stinks. What's wrong with these guys? And they'll cook up something in the last 2.5, 3 minutes and steal a game.
Yeah, I know. It's the same. Everybody got on me for 6 weeks ago saying the Bears were frauds. At the time, my argument was, all you've done is win close games against bad teams. You need block field goal to beat the Raiders, and you needed Jackson Dart to suffer a concussion to beat the Giants at home. This was not a powerhouse team, but I think they have played better. And like you said, like they just have this belief late in the game. We're going to come back and we're going to win. Caleb Williams has that belief. And I don't think this is a great matchup for the Rams, who I think are the better team. Like the Rams are one of the top 2 teams in the NFL along with Seattle. I think pretty much everybody agrees on that at this point. I will say this about the Rams, though. Since the fourth quarter at Seattle, they lost, obviously, that Seattle game. Come back and lose after that and against the Falcons. And Sean McVay says, I need to play my starters in week 18. My team's not playing well right now. He knew. That was a very un-McVay response. And he understood my team is not great right now. They did not play that well against the Cardinals in week 18. They just pulled away from a bad team in the fourth quarter. And then they should have lost to the Carolina Panthers. The Rams have not played good football in a month. And their secondary is not great. And you're going against a team that can throw the ball and has multiple options in the receiving court at tight end, Loveland coming alive. I don't think it's a great match. I was surprised the line was as high as it was. I thought it would be a field goal tops. I saw it at 4.5 early in the week. I thought that was really high. I think the Bears can stick in this game just because of their belief, their momentum, and also just the Rams not playing very good football lately.
Yeah, they found it in pockets late against Carolina, but that's against the Carolina Panthers. How much? Yeah. And you talked about week 18 playing the starters against, Arizona. I don't know how much stock we put in.
They were losing in that game in the second half. They were either trailing or tied in the third quarter, and then they finally were like, all right, we'll blow a stiff wind and beat the Carolina Panther or the Arizona Cardinals. But they didn't play well in that game either. Like that, if you watch that game, like that this Rams team has not played well in a really long time.
Follow him on social media at Yahoo Schwab. Frank Schwab of Yahoo Sports covers the NFL, does so exceedingly well. We appreciate the time today, man. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Frank Schwab of Yahoo Sports here on You Better You Bet. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos. Always inside the Westwood One Sports app, and we've got you covered with college football before the end of the hour. Brooks Austin, recruiting director for SI from the Film Guy Network, going to join us to talk about Miami, Indiana. But coming up next, I've figured out, after all the mean mugging and the sour faces, even when they're up by 5 touchdowns, all the memes, I've figured out exactly who Curt Cignetti really is, and I'll tell you who next here on You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
I got a feeling this line may grow in favor of Buffalo. I would not be surprised the Bills close as like a 2.5-point favorite. Again, given the assessment that I've gotten from a lot of people there in the Mile High City. The biggest issue for Denver, as we said, until we're blue in the face, just how sluggish they've been in the first half. I mean, they got to come out with guns ablazing. They got to come out popping. They got to come out firing. They got to be efficient. They got to score some points because the Buffalo Bills got to be able to rack some points. And, I think you hit it right on the head. Can RJ Harvey be that guy on the ground? And the area you can take advantage of the Buffalo Bills is in the trenches. They're number 24 since week 12 in rush EPA defense. So maybe Bo Nix and his scrambling ability, he can make some chunk gains in that area. But yeah, the back end of that Bills defense is stiff and stout and unrelenting. I think the Bills will have an advantage. Josh Allen is genius, his brilliance, despite how awesome that Broncos defense is. He is going to push him. He's going to test him. And Khalil Shakir, given his savvy route running ability, is a guy that can certainly do some work and some dirty work underneath. Even if James Cook doesn't arrive again, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes out and has another sub 60, 65-yard day. So I think Josh Allen is going to be too much. And I just don't trust Denver to start off hot. I don't.
And a lot of those people really don't know our team. They don't know what we're made of, what we got, and I get it. I think a lot of that negative stuff in the media fueled the guys returning from this team.
This is You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
I'm Chris Mack, in for Nick Costos today here on You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports. Coming up in less than 20 minutes, about 15 actually, Brooks Austin, recruiting director for SI, the Film Guy Network, going to join us and tell us what exactly Miami can do to beat Indiana on Monday night in the national championship game. And we'll get back into a discussion about where the hell the Pittsburgh Steelers go from here, if anywhere. Or do they just run it back and do the same damn thing again? That coming up at the top of the hour, 11 a.m. Eastern here on You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports. Inside the Westwood One Sports app. You can watch the show, too, on YouTube. Go to youtube.com/@thecostos, TheKostos. Nick will be back tomorrow. Yet here we are, getting you through the day after the finale of Wild Card Weekend, looking ahead to the divisional round as well. And as I mentioned, the national championship game now just 6 days away. And I've figured out exactly who Curt Cignetti is. I've figured it out. Curt Cignetti, with all the sourpuss faces when they're up by 4 touchdowns, with all the, oh, everybody doubts us. And listen, Curt, at this point, you're 15-0. I don't know how many people are doubting that you're going to walk into Miami and handle the Hurricanes. But I appreciate your moxie, right? I appreciate the commitment to the bit. I appreciate you standing up and bullying the bullies right back. I figured out who Kurt Signetti is. He's Ralphie in A Christmas Story. And I don't mean through the totality of the movie. I mean that one very specific instance. Look, you just watched it 75 times last month. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Kurt Signetti is Ralphie in A Christmas Story when the switch gets flipped and he just beats the snot, the ever-loving snot out of Scott Farkas in that back alley. When he's had enough, when he can only look at that yellow-toothed mug, he's had it. He can't do it anymore. And Scott Farkas is nah, ha, ha, with that annoying laugh and that stupid hat. And Ralphie snaps. Ralphie goes off and just starts bullying the bully, pummeling Scott Farkas until he's crying and asking for mercy. That's what Kurt Signetti is. Indiana had been Ralphie and his friends for the last, 60 years, losing his college football program at the D1 level. And then Signetti walked in and he'd had enough. Kurt Signetti is Ralphie from A Christmas Story. So let's call this a character study of Kurt Signetti. He's bullying back the bullies. I think that tracks, doesn't it, Bill? That Kurt Signetti is our Ralphie standing up for us against that bully Scott Farkas.
Yeah, I like that comp. I think that's an interesting way to look at this one because I agree with you. Signetti's stance, and he's not the first coach that's done this, but Signetti's stance of just trying to find that underdog role when it's not there is interesting.
Yeah, so that's my character study for today. I have some others in mind, but I thought, what the hell? Let's open it up to the room and talk about one thing we love in sports talk radio are comparisons and analogies. We love them. So let's make some to some of the best or some of our favorite characters from movies and TV shows over the years. Who is your character study on?
All right, I actually have two for you, Chris, so I'm going to give them to you. And I'm going to preface this first one that if you have not seen the movie Usual Suspects, and you plan to, it's 30 years old, turn the radio down for about 20 seconds, 30 seconds, and come back. And then you won't have the ending ruined. But Ben Johnson is Kaiser Soze because he is the ultimate guy of setting it up. This is a guy who he looks like he's verbal Kint the first half. Like the offense looks disjointed. The defense is getting smoked. They don't know what's going on. And then in the fourth quarter, something clicks. Ben's been doing all this research, right? For 3 quarters, he's been taking in all this information. And he snaps, and he becomes Kaiser Soze, and he has set up the police department, and he walks out of that game with a victory. So that is my first one, Ben Johnson, Kaiser Soze.
And then before you can even shake his hand, he's gone.
Exactly. I
like that one,
Chris. Yeah, I thought that was pretty good. My next one is C.J. Stroud, and this one might be a little weird, but I like this. C.J. Stroud is Indiana Jones, not through the entirety of the movie franchise, but in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Because here's the one thing people forget about Raiders of the Lost Ark. Indiana Jones lost. He didn't do anything right in that movie. He kept losing to the Nazis every step of the way. He's getting locked into caverns with snakes. He's getting tied up at the end of the movie. He keeps losing every step of the way. But he did one thing right. He closed his eyes when they opened the Ark of the Covenant. And the Ark of the Covenant is the Houston Texans defense, obliterating anything in its path. And C.J. Stroud just has to stay out of the way. And that's all he did. And at the end of the movie, Indiana Jones is still standing, and he's the only one there. So the Houston Texans are the Ark of the Covenant, and C.J. Stroud is Indiana Jones. It doesn't matter what he does wrong, he still wins.
Does that make Gillette Stadium the Temple of Doom? And make Mike Vrabel that crazy voodoo doctor who rips people's hearts out?
Rips hearts out?
Before they get dropped into the flames? Yeah. If Stroud plays anything like he did last night, yeah, definitely. All right, I want to continue our character study here. Tyler, who do you have on the list if we're going to go around and compare people to our favorite characters?
So yeah, I am not a big movie guy. People on the show know this. People who have listened know this. but I immediately thought about this one when we talked about this on the phone. A.J. Brown is Andy Dufresne from Shawshank Redemption. Like, he's been plotting his escape for months at this point. And now that the season's finally over, he's signing jerseys for all the players. He's outside the NovaCare Center in Philadelphia on his knees, like looking at the heavens, like, I'm finally out of here. I'm finally free. So Andy Dufresne, that was the one that came up to me. And like a side note, I'm an Eagles fan. I don't agree with Nick. I don't think they should trade A.J. Brown. I think this is kind of an easy fix. But I thought this was like A.J. Brown finally gets this escape from Philadelphia and gets to go somewhere else. And I think they eventually will trade him.
Nick Sirianni walks back into the locker room, just a poster up on the wall, throws that pebble right through it. What say you, Miss Fuzzy Britches? Just up and vanish like a fart in the wind. That could be A.J. Brown. I like that. Just standing outside the Shawshank prison, letting the rain wash down and absolve him of all that he did in Philadelphia. Kenny, do you have one for us? Give me a character study.
I was going to give you Caleb Williams being Superman, but that's kind of his nickname, and we all kind of know that.
Oh, my God. Fanboy. Can you fanboy any harder, Kenny?
No, I'm on cloud nine right now, but I'll give you another one. I'll give you another USC quarterback.
Okay.
I'm going to compare Sam Darnold to Rocky Balboa, and you guys may not like this, but he was once an underdog, and now Tom Brady, and Peyton Manning are the only three quarterbacks in NFL history to win 14 games in a row, back-to-back years. So now he's here. He's just going to probably have to knock out Drago, which you could say is Matthew Stafford.
Yeah. That also means that at some point there's going to be a downfall, and he's going to have to go train Tommy Morrison.
Well, that was last year, right? With the Vikings.
Okay. So maybe this is the upswing again. That roller coaster story of rock. Everybody in Philadelphia is now choking on their breakfast listening to us compare Sam Darnold to Rocky Balboa, who they consider an actual real person rather than a fictional character. Anybody else before we wrap up our character studies as we go around the room? Anybody jump in if you have one, because I have one more that I want to take us to break with. Mike, what do you have?
All right, this is a deep cut right here, but if anyone's seen the John Carpenter classic movie The Thing, I think Nick Sirianni is McCready in that just nobody trusts anybody anymore, and we're all very tired.
And we're all very tired. That's about the most apt description of how people probably feel in Philadelphia after this season. We're all very tired. The best was the clip I saw from the local news in Philadelphia with the little kid saying that he wanted Kevin Patullo down the street at McDonald's flipping burgers rather than staying on as offensive coordinator. One more. At this point, Aaron Rodgers has to be Danny Glover in Lethal Weapon and has to just look around and say, I'm too old for this bleep. That's it. He's done. He's cooked. It's over. So those are our character studies today here on You Better You Bet. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos here on Westwood One Sports. We want to get into the actual football of the national championship game after I brought up Curt Cignetti and compared him to Ralphie from A Christmas Story, and we will do that. Can the Miami Hurricanes stack up enough defense in Fernando Mendoza's way to win a national championship after getting in on the bubble to the CFP in the first place? From the Film Guy Network, recruiting director for Sports Illustrated, Brooks Austin joins us next here on You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
I got a feeling this line may grow in favor of Buffalo. I would not be surprised the Bills close as like a 2.5-point favorite. Again, given the assessment that I've gotten from a lot of people there in the Mile High City. The biggest issue for Denver, as we said, until we're blue in the face, just how sluggish they've been in the first half. I mean, they got to come out with guns ablazing. They got to come out popping. They got to come out firing. They got to be efficient. They got to score some points because the Buffalo Bills are going to be able to rack some points. And, I think you hit it right on the head. Can RJ Harvey be that guy on the ground? And the area you can take advantage of the Buffalo Bills is in the trenches. They're number 24 since week 12 in rush EPA defense. So maybe Bo Nix and his scrambling ability, he can make some chunk gains in that area. But yeah, the back end of that Bills defense is stiff and stout and unrelenting. I think the Bills will have an advantage. Josh Allen is genius, his brilliance, despite how awesome that Broncos defense is. He is going to push him. He's going to test him. And Khalil Shakir, given his savvy route running ability, is a guy that can certainly do some work and some dirty work underneath. Even if James Cook doesn't arrive again, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes out and has another like sub 60, 65-yard day. So I think Josh Allen is going to be too much. And I just don't trust Denver to start off hot. I don't.
Welcome back to You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
Chris Mack in for Nick Costos on You Better You Bet today here on Westwood One Sports. Always inside the Westwood One Sports app as well. Top of the hour, I cry some more about the Steelers, and we'll try to get me through an emotional morning after very little sleep. But I got to pivot away from the NFL for just a bit to talk college ball with our guy Brooks Austin of the Film Guy Network on YouTube, recruiting director at SI as well. Follow him on social media, please, at Brooks Austin BA. Morning, Brooks. How you doing? How's the coffee going down?
Hey, look, man, it's going down all right. It's going down all right this morning. Everybody tries their new things in January. We were just talking before the break. I'm doing the black coffee thing. It just feels torturous. It feels like self-punishment. But you know what? The best things in life require a little bit of discipline. So here's to it this morning.
Cheers. Is there any way? Give me a way the Miami Hurricanes make this a game against Indiana.
What?
Give me.
Why are we doing this? I don't want to do this. It's weird. It's weird like that. This Miami, look, I know what the line is 9 points. Like I know everybody expects Miami expects Indiana to control the football game because they've seen what Indiana has done the first 2 playoff matchups, right? They thumped Alabama and they thumped Oregon. And everybody expects them to control this football game so much so that we're doing the how do they have a chance? How do they get I mean, guys, they have a chance by shrinking the football game, running the ball, and controlling possession. They have a chance. They have more than a chance, by the way, in my opinion, because they have a really, really good defense as well, does Miami. And they're playing really, really good football at this point. Do I expect them to win the football game? I have no idea. I haven't picked the football game yet. But, man, they're not a bad football team. I know Indiana's great. I don't know Indiana's play really, really well. I also think there's this, like, really weird thing about Miami where no, I don't think anybody expected them to beat Texas A&M on the road, and then they did that. And I know there wasn't a soul, including Vegas, there wasn't a soul picking Miami to beat Ohio State, and they controlled that football game for 4 quarters. And then all of a sudden they become like, oh, does Ole Miss have a chance against them in the Fiesta Bowl? And now they're back to the woe is me. How does little old Miami figure out this football game? I think all that is noise. You know what I'm saying? At this point, I think we could talk about how do we actually find ways to win the football game as a team. And if you're going to beat Indiana, you got to play clean for 4 quarters. That you cannot have moments of stagnation. You cannot have moments of self-inflicted wounds. You cannot have these things. You have to execute for the 70 snaps that they may allow you to have. This is a weird operation that Indiana's got going on because, and I say weird because in the history of college football, if you don't have the talent, if you don't have the quote-unquote blue chippers, if you're doing it through the portal, if you're doing it through restacking and rebuilding your roster every single year, normally you have to have some type of schematic advantage. You have to get some type of math tilt, right? Like in basketball, it's, oh, we're undersized guard play. Okay, we got to shoot 40% and lot from 3 to overcome the math, right? Same thing in football. We got to take a lot of snaps. We got to burn a lot of plays. We got to get a lot of opportunities. That's not what Indiana does. Indiana has not taken 70 offensive snaps since the Penn State football game. They want to take 60 snaps. They want to grind it out. They want to get into a bunch of 3rd and 2s, and they want to box your lights out with execution. So that's where Miami's got to play. All right, Miami's got to play really, really well and sound in the execution department. And for the most part, I think they've done so. They've played 12 quarters in the college football playoff, and I think for 10 of those, they've played really, really clean football.
So is the blueprint, can the A&M blueprint work against Indiana? I guess that would be the next question from there, because I don't think Indiana is going to be as reckless as A&M was at times, obviously, as you just pointed out. They want to out-responsible you, if that's a thing. Can Miami out-responsible Indiana, as you're talking about here, and are both of them just going to sit there and stare at each other and wait for the other one to blink?
So what scares me about the matchup from Miami's standpoint, and I can understand what Vegas is looking at other than expecting, and the line, expecting people to just expect Indiana to roll, I think is why that line was set the way it was. But 2 things concern me. One, Indiana has been explosive versus everybody in the green area. Like the moment they get the ball into plus territory, Charlie Beckert and Surratt are due for a 35-yard explosive. Like we saw it against Oregon, you saw it against Bama. They've done it all year. They did it against Ohio State on 3rd and 2 to ice that football game in the Big Ten. So they're bound to be, and when I talk about explosive, I'm talking about 45-yard chunks, 40-yard chunks downfield when they find man-to-man coverage, because inevitably they force it. So that concerns me. It doesn't really matter how good you are at coverage either. Like we learned that in the Fiesta Bowl. I didn't feel as if, apart from the Charlie Beckert touchdown that put them up 21-3, I did not think there was a single solitary moment where it was like, dang, that corner got beat like you know what. Like that corner is nowhere near him. No, it's either back shoulder fades or like tremendous ball placement by the quarterback in Mendoza. So that right there worries me about anybody's matchup against this unit, because those receivers are NFL bound and the quarterback's NFL bound. no matter how good you are at defensive back, you're going to have problems with that. The other thing that worries me about Miami is that they weren't exactly clean for 4 quarters. I mentioned 10 of 12 quarters. They've played really, really clean football. 2 of those came in their most recent football game, from my opinion. Like, they were bad from a protection standpoint. This is a great offensive line, and they were bad. For my money, bad at the offensive line protection standpoint. In pass protection against an Ole Miss unit that, going into the game, I was like, on paper, they should be giving Carson Beck all the time in the world. My primary concern was, how will Ole Miss stop Miami? Look at this offensive line. I know what Ole Miss's defensive line is. They're pretty decent in the run game, and interiorly they're really good, but they don't have dominant, like, twitchy rush or like great rushers. And I thought Miami was going to be fine. Nope. Carson Beck had to play hot most of the football game and was under pressure. And the way they were doing it was twist and stunts and chaos. Hey, buddy, that's what we got to play on Monday night. Like, that's what Indiana is. Indiana is not one of these, like, I got a bunch of Jimmys and Joes, I'm going to beat you. No, they beat you with X's and O's. They beat you with chaos. They beat you with confusion. So that concerns me as well about this matchup for Miami. But they can make this a 30-tote Mark Fletcher football game. They can do that. If you haven't seen this Miami running back, you're going to find out. He's 6'2" and a half, 230 pounds, and he runs downhill.
Yeah, you can't miss him. He's like a bowling ball covered in razor blades. Have fun trying to tackle the dude. Brooks Austin, the Film Guy Network on YouTube, recruiting director at SI. Follow him on social media. Great stuff. He's going to do a film breakdown as soon as he's done talking to us, and he's going to get it posted later, and you're going to be smarter for having watched it. Supreme Ball Knower at Brooks Austin, BA, here on You Better You Bet. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos. So how does Indiana force Carson Beck to devolve back into late-stage Georgia Carson Beck and to make the mistakes mentally that he has not made in games of consequence down the stretch for Miami?
For me, like, when Carson makes mistakes, they're like, I got it, too aggressive mistakes. Like, you have to make him feel like he has to play outside of himself in order to win the football game. That's the only time I've ever seen him be a problem. Like, honest to God, I think the kid's thrown 22 interceptions in the last 2 years. I think 15 of them we could sit there and go, probably not on the quarterback. Honest to God, like 7 of the 12 or 8 of the 12 or whatever it was last year at Georgia were improper depth of wide receivers, bad breaks, like tips at the line of scrimmage, or just like things that he cannot control. For example, he threw a pick against Alabama where the wide receiver is supposed to be in a screen route. He is not. Like, he's busting out there with a missed execution, missed assignment. Like, those types of things aren't on the quarterback. I've always felt like this kid, unless you make him feel, like I said, like he's got to score 45 points today, he normally plays within himself. He normally protects the football. You will not, like, there's no trick in him normally. There's no, you might get him to force a ball into a tight window that gets tipped and then intercepted. That's how you get him to turn it over. The interception he had against Ole Miss, not on the quarterback. Now, the other things that he did, worry me sometimes. Like, he got Malachi Tony killed early in the football game. He got a tight end killed early in the football game because he sees tight windows as I could put it there, results be damned. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes he does that because sometimes the game of football requires that. I need you to make a play just as much as you need me to make one as a quarterback. So, and Miami's wide receivers, to their credit, they made every single one of them. Well, the Lofton kid, the tight end, had an incredible catch over the middle. Tony had an incredible catch over the middle. The Marion Brown kid showed up out of nowhere for the biggest game of his career in that Fiesta Bowl. So I think that's a lot of people count Miami out. They are a championship caliber football team, in my opinion, because of what college football requires you to do. What college football requires you to do is when your starting corner, number 6, gets a targeting penalty and is out for the game, and we can debate whether or not it was a real targeting penalty, and then you got to throw a true freshman corner out there that was a 3-star out of Louisiana, and it's week 14, game 14, game 15, game 16 at this point. That kid better be ready to play. Number 16 goes in there and goes bump and run man-to-man coverage with Jabron Stribling, who has won games for Ole Miss at this point this year, and breaks a ball up, gets off the field, gives the offense the ball back, and we go win a football game. That's what college football is, because these rosters and numbers are tighter than ever nowadays. And when the starter goes down, the backup better be ready to go with no drop-off.
Brooks, we only got about a minute here, so I'm going to ask you. Fernando Mendoza is probably going to go first overall. Is he first overall in an NFL draft any other year or just this year?
I don't know. Probably. I mean, other years, there's probably a guy that goes one. Here's what scares me about him. He came from a system at Cal that was probably 22% RPO. He's in a system now at Indiana that is 25% RPO. We don't RPO on the Sunday league. We just don't. The line of scrimmage rules are different. The ability to get down the field are different. So a quarter of our plays are very much so reading leverage of defenders and a single solitary defender, right? And then making an accurate throw. We're about to take 90% of our snaps on Sunday with full field progressions. I'm not saying he can't do it, because I've heard him talk the sport. I've heard him talk defense. Is usually really smart. But we haven't seen him do it at a really, really high rate, at a consistent rate. So that would concern me, but he's certainly talented. He's really, really deadly accurate with the football. So if you're accurate and you're like a plus athlete, which he is, I think he's a good enough athlete, you'll be fine eventually. But we got to lean on a lot of things that we don't do a lot of right now. That's all I would say about him.
Brooks, great stuff, man. Love the breakdowns. Going to look for more of them leading up to Monday night's game between Miami and Indiana. The Film Guy Network on YouTube, recruiting director at SI. Follow him on social media at Brooks Austin BA. Enjoy the last few sips of coffee and go get after it, brother. Thank you.
Y'all have a good one.
Brooks Austin here on You Better You Bet. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos today on Westwood One Sports. I want to clip, when I do a solo show, I wrap it up towards the end of the show with the 3 stars of the day. What he had to say about Mark Fletcher Jr. there belongs in the 3 stars at the end of the show. That's what's getting lost, I think, in all of this Miami-Indiana talk, is Indiana's defense is damn good. But if Mark Fletcher starts to roll and gets going downhill, like I said, bowling ball covered in razor blades, it changes everything for this game and how Miami can beat Indiana. Coming up, how much are they willing to change in Pittsburgh, if at all? Tough decisions on the table for the Pittsburgh Steelers this offseason. We get into it next. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos here on You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
I got a feeling this line may grow in favor of Buffalo. I would not be surprised the Bills close as like a 2.5-point favorite. Again, given the assessment that I've gotten from.
Last thing I'll say, our producer Brandon Combs put in the rundown. Will Pat Boyle get a Bears tattoo if the Bears win the Super Bowl like he predicts? Sure. You got a deal. Game on.
Oh.
I will get it. I will get a tattoo. I'll get a tattoo. Whatever Combs wants to do.
Decide
Brandon,
where it's gonna go, Pat?
I'll put it on probably on my ass so nobody sees it.
Okay.
But Brandon, you can draw up this puppy however you want. Whatever tattoo you want to get for me to put on my body, I will do it. If the Bears win the Super Bowl, you have yourself a show bet here on BetMGM tonight. How do you like that?
We'll do it live. Okay. We'll do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
Do it live on the air if we can. I'll get a tattoo artist pull up right next to me here. You guys see my cheeks? That's probably not legal, but what's the next best thing?
This isn't going to be no Mario Heron tattoo either. You're actually going to get this damn thing done.
Yeah, I'm not a little, squeak sissy like Mario who chickened out of it. I will get the tattoo if the Bears win the Super Bowl. That's a guarantee.
This is You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
What the hell are the Steelers going to do? 9 straight years without a playoff win. 7 straight losses in the postseason for Mike Tomlin. And they've somehow gotten progressively uglier and uglier year after year. We'll dive into that in just a moment here on You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports. Inside the Westwood One Sports app, Chris Mack in for Nick Costos. He'll be back tomorrow, still streaming live on YouTube, youtube.com/@thecostos, TheKostos. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a ton of great insight from Brooks Austin on college football, Indiana, Miami, Frank Schwab of Yahoo Sports on the divisional round of the NFL playoffs. But right off the top of the show, talk to my good friend, Steelers insider Mark Cabali, correspondent for the Pat McAfee Show. We co-host a Pittsburgh sports Steelers podcast together, Cabali and Mac. We got very creative with the name there. But we were up late last night after this loss by the Pittsburgh Steelers, trying to figure out just how much change can, should, and most importantly, will happen with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And you could say it all starts with Aaron Rodgers and what he decides to do, because maybe that impacts what Mike Tomlin wants to do and whether he wants to play another year of quarterback roulette or not. Look at the names that have rolled through, by the way, and started games for the Pittsburgh Steelers at quarterback since Ben Roethlisberger retired. I mean, Pickett, Trubisky, Rudolph, and I like Mason, but back up. Pickett, Trubisky, Rudolph, Fields, Wilson, now Rodgers. And without that answer at quarterback, I thought there was a great point made by Frank Schwab an hour ago. They had Jackson Dart in the palm of their hand last year's first round and decided to pass on him. They got a great defensive lineman in Derek Harmon, but that doesn't solve the quarterback issue. And now you're coming up on a quarterback-poor draft and certainly a quarterback-poor free agency class. You're going to give up all those resources you've built up in the draft. The Steelers have something like 10 picks in this year's draft, which will be in their backyard at their stadium in Pittsburgh. You're going to give up some of those for a Kyler or a Tua? Eesh. That's not the solution, is it? And so I understand those that say, well, it all starts and ends with quarterback. Until you figure out quarterback, I mean, you can't do anything. And they haven't given Mike Tomlin a quarterback since Ben Roethlisberger retired. Well, I would ask you to press pause there. Mike Tomlin has a lot to do with the construction of the roster in Pittsburgh. Mike Tomlin is the most powerful person in the Steelers organization whose last name is not Rooney. The Rooney family owns the Steelers. Art Rooney II is in charge in Steelers headquarters. And he's the one who it all starts with this offseason. Art Rooney II falls in line with the rest of the Rooney family's preference for stability and consistency. It's why they have not fired a head coach in 56, 57 years. It's why they've had 3 head coaches in half a century. The Pittsburgh Steelers do not wade in the waters of jumping through head coaches every couple of years. They just don't. They want to find their guy and stick with him through thick and thin. Now, look, it's very easy to stick with a guy beyond the first few years if he wins in the first few years, like Bill Cowher did when he became their head coach in the 90s, like Mike Tomlin did when he became their head coach in the mid-2000s. Becomes much harder to stick with a guy beyond the first few years if those first few years are 6-11, 7-10. No one's saying that's instantly going to happen if you walk away from Mike Tomlin. But you're not going to know if you keep banging your head against the wall, hoping that somehow you put a dent in the cinder block with your skull. You're not. You're just going to end up bloody and dazed and confused and wondering why the hell you keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. Mike Tomlin can be a great head coach, and he can still have run his course in Pittsburgh. And the thing to watch for is what happens. And we won't be there unless you're a fly on the wall in Art Rooney II's office when he meets with Mike Tomlin, whether it's today, later this week, next week, whenever it may be, sooner rather than later, I would hope. We won't know, but if Art Rooney II says to Mike Tomlin, listen, we both know you've got an option on your contract for 2027 that we have to choose whether we're going to pick up or not before March. I'm going to tell you right now, Mike, we can't pick up that option right now. You haven't won a playoff game in nearly a decade. You've lost 7 postseason games in a row. We like you. You're always going to be a pretty thick chapter in this franchise's story. You've got a ring. You're probably going to the Hall of Fame someday. We just don't think your story continues here unless you want to go into 2026 as a lame duck with that final year on your contract and prove the world wrong. At which point, I imagine Mike Tomlin would say, yeah, I can't see myself doing that, Mr. Rooney. I think unless I get some additional job security, more years tacked on to the end of my deal, at least another year, I can't go into 2026 trying to build this thing out, trying to find the answers that I haven't been able to find over the last decade. And there is a reason. I want people to understand this. There is a reason there has been so much smoke around Mike Tomlin's future in Pittsburgh. It's not because the Rooney family is talking to anybody. You have to believe it's because Mike Tomlin's surrogates in the media, or surrogate, i.e. Jay Glazer of Fox, has made it very clear, and other insiders have gleaned this information as well, that Mike Tomlin could make a good chunk of change just sitting at a desk once a week for 18 weeks in the fall, dropping some of those awesome sayings that he drops in during his weekly press conferences. Well, if you got red paint, you paint the barn red. I'm not going to unpack my bags on the bed of the collective. The standard is the standard. That would be an excuse, and we don't make them. I could do another 20 minutes on Mike Tomlinisms. I won't. The smoke that's out there around Mike Tomlin and the Steelers possibly coming to a mutual parting of ways, a conscious uncoupling. Thank you, Gwyneth Paltrow. That is out there so that the path for an easy exit exists where Mike Tomlin does not lose any face, where he still gets to go out and, if he wants to, entertains the idea of a job elsewhere, where Mike Tomlin can take a year off and then maybe re-enter the coaching ranks, where Mike Tomlin could take a year off, then go do TV, and then maybe come back into the coaching ranks when just the right opportunity shows up, where he doesn't have to play quarterback roulette year after year after year until he finds a Hall of Famer. So that smoke is very real. And this is just as much Mike Tomlin's decision as it is the Pittsburgh Steelers' decision. The Pittsburgh Steelers are never going to, quote unquote, fire Mike Tomlin. A lot of Steelers fans would love to see that headline today or at some point in the next couple days or weeks. Steelers terminate Mike Tomlin. It would be a catharsis for a lot of Steelers fans who feel like their birthright is, at the very least, a conference championship appearance. Come on, we got 6 Lombardis in the trophy case down there at 3400 South Water Street. Get us back there, somebody, please. And if you can't do it, then get the hell out. Would feel great for a lot of Steeler fans to see Mike Tomlin doing the walk of shame. It's not going to happen. If Mike Tomlin and the Steelers are not together in 2026, it's because Mike Tomlin has decided that's the best course of action. And there's a couple of things that can feed into that, in addition to Art Rooney II actually having the guts to go against the wave of consistency that has long reigned supreme in Pittsburgh. Could simply be, like I said, Aaron Rodgers says, hey, Coach T, it was a blast, man. I loved Pittsburgh in the year that I was there. Had a ton of fun, but I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And Mike Tomlin says, okay, yeah, I'm not going to take another ride on the quarterback merry-go-round. I'm not going to take a swing with Malik Willis or Anthony Richardson or Tua Tagovailoa or Kyler Murray or whoever the hell else might be available. And I know we're not getting anybody in the draft. And I don't want to break in Will Howard. I don't want to go down any of these roads. I think it's time to walk away. But it all comes back to Mike Tomlin being the guy who has to make that decision. And if I were Mike Tomlin, I'm not, clearly, but if I were Mike Tomlin, a guy who's always supremely confident that he's going to have his team ready to do what's necessary, I would have to take a step back and say, okay, we haven't gotten it done in the playoffs. As good as I think we've been, haven't been able to get it done when the games matter the most. And they're chanting Fire Tomlin anytime we get beat at home. Maybe I need to just walk away. Maybe I need to just cleanse my palate of what was a wonderful 2 decades for me and my family in Pittsburgh, but just walk away. And all that smoke that's been circulating around Tomlin, really since a very ugly loss to the Buffalo Bills at home late in the season, it's there for a reason. It's because Tomlin or people close to him want that smoke to be there so that it does make sense if he decides to walk away, so that it doesn't look like he's quitting, because this is not a guy who quits. This is a guy who loves ball. To watch Mike Tomlin at the field of Pittsburgh Steelers practice is to watch a guy who loves ball and loves being out there around the game. And after a couple weeks away from this thing, he may take a good long hard look in the mirror and say, I still think I can do this. But that's where it comes back around to ownership and the people in charge of the Pittsburgh Steelers, the people who are named Rooney, to say, it's great. We're glad you feel good about what you can still do. You just don't have any more time left in Pittsburgh to do it. Now, the alternative pathway here is that Aaron Rodgers does decide to come back in 2026. I don't think it's likely. But again, he had a wonderful time in Pittsburgh his 1 year there. And he may look at it and say, man, we get a couple pieces in here. Offensive line is improved. I know it didn't look like it last night against Houston, but that's an all-world defensive front that I think is going to give Drake May fits on Sunday. Offensive line is improved. We just need to find some more weapons for me to utilize. Kenneth Gainwell came out of nowhere and was team MVP. We can do this. We can make a run, Coach T. Me and you, 1 more year off into the sunset. Come on, let's do it. And they do decide to go 1 more year with Rodgers and Tomlin. That is an alternative, if albeit unlikely, pathway forward for the Steelers. Well, what are you doing for your future then? You're putting it off another year. You're going back to the well again, banging your head off the wall 1 more time, expecting different results. And at a certain point, someone in Pittsburgh in charge has to stand up and say, listen, no more, no mas. We can't. Not only are we not going anywhere, significant anyway, not only are we not going anywhere with this tactic, but we're prolonging the agony of what's going to happen after the fact. Nobody in Pittsburgh is going to be excited if the Steelers bring in a new head coach, decide to go with a young quarterback or a retread veteran who's looking to prove himself with a new team, Murray, Tagovailoa, and go 6-11 for a couple of years. Nobody's going to get excited about that. But it may be just what they need. Not a hardcore tear it down to the studs rebuild, although that's about as close as you could get, new head coach, new quarterback. But as hard a reset as you can get. And the sooner everybody in charge in Pittsburgh, not named Mike Tomlin, comes to that realization, the better it is for the future of the Pittsburgh Steelers organization. A team that is convinced they should be in contention every single year and who somehow keep getting away with 10 wins every single year. But man, it feels like that's the ceiling. That's the ceiling under the Tomlin regime. 10 wins and a first-round exit. Full disclosure, Chris Mack here filling in for Nick Costos on You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports. I've grown up in Pittsburgh my entire life, other than a few years away at Penn State for college. Yeah, I went all of 2 hours down the road. I've grown up in Pittsburgh. I've watched the Steelers since I was old enough to watch football, since Bubby Brister was their quarterback. Oof. I've seen it all. I've seen good, I've seen bad, I've seen ugly. The one thing I've never seen is the Pittsburgh Steelers acknowledge what may be right in front of them, which is, hey, we might have to suffer for a year or two in order to turn this thing around. Because they always are convinced they are right there in it. This is the year. We made the changes. You see what we did? We got Ramsey. We got DK. We got Rodgers. This is the year. Here we come. Look out. That way of thinking of, hey, if we can just squeeze out that one or two extra wins in the playoffs. At this point, it's just one win in the playoffs. They haven't won a playoff game in 9 years. You know that. I don't need to repeat it again. But until they acknowledge that that's what they're working for, simply a playoff win, playoffs, I don't think they're really going to see the hard truth that's staring back at them in the mirror, which is that standard that your fans have come to expect is the standard, as they call it, in Pittsburgh, inside Steelers headquarters, is not actually contending for rings, for Lombardis, for titles anymore. Just getting to the playoffs. I have a 12-year-old son who last night looked at me right before he laid his head down on the pillow after staying up to watch the miserable ending to that game and said, Dad, told you, 10-7 and a wild card loss. And he did. He told me that back in August. The kid actually predicted a division title, 10-7, and a wild card exit. Props to him. I should have taken some money from his piggy bank and bet it. Could have paid for college. Okay, maybe not for college, but at least a book or two. And that's what's most disheartening. For fans in places like Pittsburgh or Green Bay, where they're having very similar conversations, despite the fact that he hasn't been around nearly as long as Mike Tomlin, very similar conversations about Matt LaFleur. Is your standard going to the Super Bowl and maybe actually winning one? Or is your standard, hey, let's just get to the playoffs, okay? And then who knows what can happen? That's not a plan for winning a championship. That's a plan for getting to the playoffs. And maybe, just maybe, winning a game. That's why I said off the top of the show, you can't simply hand Matt LaFleur a multi-year extension. Maybe an additional year. Make him sing for his supper, as it were, and prove that he deserves a longer deal by going out in 2026. Maybe actually winning a division. Maybe not getting shown up by Ben Johnson. Maybe not melting down 2 times in 3 weeks with a lead at Soldier Field. We ask ourselves all the time, well, if you're going to get rid of this guy or you're going to put him on the hot seat, who are you going to get? I understand that line of thinking. I do. I get where you're coming from. But it also is a classic example of doing something, to bring this back around to Tomlin and one of his classic lines of living in your fears. Mike Tomlin has said for 19 years in Pittsburgh, we do not live in our fears. The organization lives the exact opposite, and they're living the opposite in Green Bay or anywhere else where they don't do what the Ravens did last week in firing John Harbaugh. They're living in the fear of, what happens? What happens is maybe you bring in a schlub who goes 6-11 for a few years, and then you try again. But at the very least, no stone is left unturned. You stop banging your head against the wall, bloodying yourself in the process, and you actually go out and chase what you say your goal is every single year, whether it's in Green Bay, whether it's in New England. They say goodbye to Belichick, for God's sake. Whether it's in Pittsburgh. You go out and go after what you say your real ultimate goal is. And that's where it comes back in Pittsburgh in particular to Art Rooney II, their owner. Does he have the guts to make the tough decision and wear it for a couple of years if it doesn't go as expected? Who knows? Maybe Mike Tomlin goes off somewhere else. Wins a ring somewhere else. The Eagles survived it. when Andy Reid left. The Eagles survived it, and they continued to compete and contend and eventually win a Super Bowl. You've either got to have the guts to go chase it or continue to live in your fears. And that's the hard decision that the Pittsburgh Steelers have to come to in regards to Mike Tomlin over the next few days and weeks. Coming up next, I've talked about quarterbacks and how we don't have a lot of elite ones left in these playoffs. There's another position in particular that we don't have a lot of great ones left in these playoffs, and I want to see how it plays out, especially in the divisional round. We'll get into it next. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos here on You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
The thing I am adding to the list this week, Alex, something that's kind of bothered me a lot. And it's a phrase that we use in sports way too often. It's the phrase 110%. Go out there and give it 110%. Go out there and give it your all. You know, you hear it all the time. Give it 110%. First of all, guys, that's mathematically impossible. Unless you're my car's gas gauge that one night in college, like, you're not giving it 110%. The people who say 110% are like the same people that say gazillion, you know, or like the people that say 100 and go out and give it 110%. They're the people in the corporate world that like use words like synergy, right? The people that use the phrase go out and give it 110% probably subscribe to all of David Goggins' podcasts. I just think it is time we lay to rest the give it 110%. All right. Okay. Now, look, let's say hypothetically you could actually give it 110%. We work in sports talk radio. We live on hypotheticals, right? Hypothetically, if 110% is attainable, why stop at 110%? Why not give 150%? Why not give 368%? Why not give 971%? Why are we stopping at 110? Who came up with that number? Just give it 100%. Go all out. You cannot give 110%. And if you can, why aren't you giving more?
May, head-to-head for MVP. Going end zone, Puka Nacua, and just like that, Los Angeles is on the board.
Welcome back to You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
Joe Davis on the call on Fox. In the wild card round, Puka Nacua with a touchdown catch against the Carolina Panthers. And speaking of those Panthers, we do have some breaking news we'll get to in just a second here on You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos, always inside your Westwood One Sports app. And, of course, you can watch the show streaming live on YouTube, youtube.com/@TheCostos, TheKostos. The Costos, Nick, will return tomorrow. Happy to fill in for him today, the morning after I stayed up late to watch my Steelers make a mess down their leg again in the playoffs. Just got done talking about the future of Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers, which we may revisit again before the end of the show, as well as our 3 stars of the day and some first impressions of the divisional round with thoughts from Frank Schwab included in there as well. But I mentioned last week when I filled in for Nick here on You Better You Bet that this could, in fact, be the year that your drunk, slurry uncle is right about defense wins championships, kid. Told you. Because we don't have a raft of elite quarterbacks in these playoffs. We don't. There's no Mahomes. There's no Burrow. There's no Lamar. There's not even a Jared Goff to be found. Last year's Super Bowl winning quarterback is now out as well. Jalen Hurts. No Jordan Love now. Thank you, LaFleur. It's Allen and Stafford. And I'm not trying to devalue Brock Purdy or what Sam Darnold has done this year. More often than not, I don't want to devalue what Caleb Williams could be turning into, at least in the final 2 minutes of a game, right? If Caleb Williams only had to play the final 2 to 4 minutes of every game, it's already in the Hall of Fame. There are still good quarterbacks out there. Drake May was in the MVP conversation all year. And you could argue it was the schedule, but you could also argue May looked really, really good at times. Bo Nix isn't Bo Nix. I'm still not sold. But the point is, there are good quarterbacks. Yes, absolutely. There are not a lot of great quarterbacks. The only 2 you look at and say, That's a shiny toy. I like that. That's the quarterback that can win me a Super Bowl, are Allen and Stafford. That's why, even though I do tend to believe with my drunk uncle that defense could win a championship this postseason, my Super Bowl pick when we started the postseason was Rams-Bills. I still think that's highly likely because of the quarterbacks. And that could blow this whole theory up. But you see a team like the Texans do what they did. You see a team like the Seahawks, the Broncos, what the Patriots did to Justin Herbert in the wild card round. Those are defenses, baby. Those are defenses that come to play, punch you in the mouth, and win a playoff game based on that theory of defense win championships. Texans don't win last night based on the way C.J. Stroud played without that defense. Okay, maybe they still would have because the Steelers couldn't find the end zone. But it would have had a much, much harder time. The other position that I think we have to take notice of now that is, I don't want to say bereft of talent, but you don't have a lot of those elite top flight guys, all pro guys left in the playoffs, is wide receiver. I mean, it's JSN and Puka. Those are the all pros at wide receiver left in the playoffs. That's it. And Josh Allen is a one-of-one talent, so he's making do with Khalil Shakir and Brandon Cooks. Drake May is making do with the shell of Stephon Diggs and Kayshon Boutte, and the Texans now probably without Nico Collins going into Foxborough. Incredible game from Christian Kirk last night. Every time I looked up, he was running free and open. But it's Kirk and Higgins and Noel, the pair of rookies from Iowa State. Yeah, Cortland Sutton in Denver, I guess at times belongs near the fringes of that elite wide receiver conversation. And certainly I think you've got guys in Chicago who, in Luther Burden in particular, may be a part of that conversation someday. Rome Odunze. Maybe. Someday. But other than Puka, healthy Devontae when he's healthy, and JSN, you don't have those name brand receivers left in the playoffs. And it's wild to me how we're probably, 3 years removed from the belief that you got to have an elite quarterback wide receiver combo if you're going to go anywhere, right? It was Burrow and Chase. That's the template. Okay. I'm not arguing against having a quality receiving core. Aaron Rodgers would have loved to have had one last night in Pittsburgh, although I still don't know if he would have had time to get the ball out to those guys. And if DK Metcalf would have caught it, which he did not do last night. So you still need a quality receiving core. But what we're seeing, I think, in the NFL right now is a shift away from wide receiver one being of utmost importance. Again, it's still incredibly valuable. I'm not trying to say that wide receivers don't matter. There's nuance in this conversation. But a shift toward tight ends. That's the position that I think, with more teams running 12 personnel, 1 back, 2 tight ends than ever before. I mean, the Rams have a slew of tight ends. And yes, they've also got Nakua and Adams, as I mentioned. But if you don't have a tight end that your quarterback, and Bill, you made this point when we talked this morning before the show, so I think it's valuable to bring you back in here to this part of the conversation. If you don't have a tight end that you can trust your quarterback to get the ball to in crucial situations, third downs, for example. Look what Caleb is doing with Colston Loveland. Look what Jordan Love did earlier in the year before Tucker Kraft got hurt. If you don't have that tight end, Hunter Henry, if you don't have that tight end that can save your butt as a quarterback on third down, I don't know how far you're going to go. And the importance of those tight ends continues to climb up the ladder.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, I always go back. I remember this quote from Troy Aikman. This was like 20 years ago. And he said, Emmitt Smith did his thing. Michael Irvin did his thing. My job was I got paid to convert third downs. So what do you need on third down? He needed Jay Novacek, right? And it goes all through. Jason Witten was one of these guys. All these guys where it's 3rd and 6, and you've got a big target that just gets 8 yards, gets a step, and you just deliver the football and keep the chains moving. It's so important. And yes, sometimes a wide receiver like Puka is absolutely that guy for the Rams, right? Those quick routes, and Stafford gets in the ball, and they keep the chains moving. It doesn't have to be a tight end, but a lot of the times, and that's where I really wonder about this 49ers offense without George Kittle, without Ricky Pearsall, without these guys. Like, what is Brock Purdy going to do when he has that critical conversion that he's got to make? So I think it's critical. And, we hear Kenny bringing up, and you brought up Colston Loveland. I think that's a perfect example, and not someone that offense had when Loveland was still developing. Kmet wasn't good enough to be that guy. But what we've seen with Colston Loveland the last 3-4 weeks, he's becoming that guy, and that's where this Bears offense might be more dangerous this month.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about Loveland in Chicago. Knox, obviously, in Buffalo is crucial to what Josh Allen does. I mentioned Hunter Henry in New England always being there and available. Had the lone touchdown in that game against the Chargers in the wild card round. I think one to keep an eye on in the divisional round, Dalton Schultz, who didn't have much of an impact at all last night for the Texans, but led Houston in receptions this year. Everybody's talking about the impact of Nico Collins possibly not being available in Foxborough on Sunday. If you just ask CJ, hey, I don't need you to hit Christian Kirk or Jalen Noel half a dozen times or Jaden Higgins. Just look for your tight end. Find your tight end, get the ball to Dalton Schultz, like you said, 5-6 yards downfield, let him fall forward for another 2 or 3 yards, and we're going to be in third and manageable all day long.
Yeah, 100%, because the one thing you can't have is negative plays. Like we see that all the time. You're marching 30, 40 yards, then you're second and 12, third and 9, and the entire drive, the entire concept of the drive pivots immediately. You can't have those negative plays. So when you have when the play downfield or whatever the main option, when that doesn't work out, having those safety valves that can still get you some sort of positive play. Maybe it's not a successful play, maybe you didn't get the amount of yards, so the analytics aren't happy, but you're still getting 3, 4, 5, 6 yards forward instead of 0 yards on an incompletion.
Yeah, I think we're seeing that pivot, and I think a lot of people around the league have been somewhat late to the party in that regard, where they, the Bengals are a great example. And nothing against the Bengals tight ends. Like, they've got capable guys. But when you pivot away from tight ends in any regard, Gesicki's decent. They brought in Noah Fant, but you put all your eggs in the wide receiver basket, as they did with Chase and Higgins. Those guys have to produce, and your quarterback has to be able to count on them in those situations. And look, the issues in Cincinnati are plentiful, and some of them don't even exist on that side of the ball, certainly. But you get what I'm saying. Some places in the league, I'll use the Rams as an example again. Parkinson, Higbee. They've got guys who, okay, you want to take away Puka on this route? You want to take Puka and Devontae? That's fine. I'll go 2 receivers, 2 tight ends. I'll get it to one of those tight ends. I mean, you see incredible catches like the one Parkinson made late against Carolina this past weekend. If you don't have those tight ends, you're playing from behind. And in some cases, like in Buffalo, those tight ends are option number 1 for a quarterback that knows how to use them. And I'm curious to see how the league continues to adjust to that going forward, because if they don't, then they're going to get left behind, like, teams like the Bengals. So, yeah, it's interesting to watch another position that's sort of undergoing transition, the way the wide receiver and tight end position are.
And to that point, I mean, let's look at 2 of the best offensive mind coaches in the league, Sean McVay and Ben Johnson. Not only are they going 12 personnel a lot, they're going 13 personnel a decent amount. They're putting 3 tight ends out there and passing out of those formations. So when guys like McVay, Shanahan, Ben Johnson, when those guys are doing those things, I think the league should listen.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see how it continues to evolve through the divisional round. Coming up, we'll get some first impressions on the divisional round now that the full slate is set for Saturday and Sunday. We'll get you our 3 stars of the day as well before we wrap up. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos today on You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM here on Westwood One Sports.
the thing I am adding to the list this week, Alex, something that's kind of bothered me a lot. And it's a phrase that we use in sports way too often. It's the phrase 110%. Go out there and give it 110%. Go out there and give it your all. You hear it all the time. Give it 110%. First of all, guys, that's mathematically impossible. Unless you're my car's gas gauge that one night in college, like, you're not giving it 110%. The people who say 110% are like the same people that say gazillion, or like the people that say 100 and go out and give it 110%. They're the people in the corporate world that like use words like synergy, right? The people that use the phrase go out and give it 110% probably subscribe to all of David Goggins' podcasts. I just think it is time we lay to rest the give it 110%. All right. Okay. Now, look, let's say hypothetically you could actually give it 110%. We work in sports talk radio. We live on hypotheticals, right? Hypothetically, if 110% is attainable, why stop at 110%? Why not give 150%? Why not give 368%? Why not give 971%? Why are we stopping at 110? Who came up with that number? Just give it 100%. Go all out. You cannot give 110%. And if you can, why aren't you giving more?
This is You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
Chris Mack in for Nick Costos today on You Better You Bet. Wrapping up the show in just a few minutes, but we'll get you our 3 stars of the day. We actually had 3 guests today, so it worked out perfectly. I thought they each brought a ton of insight. Brooks Austin on college football, Frank Schwab on the NFL at large, and Mark Caballi on the Steelers specifically. We'll let you hear from each of them some of their takeaways before we wrap up the show here on You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports, always inside your Westwood One Sports app and SiriusXM channel 375. I wanted to dive into divisional round first impressions, though. I completely whiffed on what we in the game call a tease. I mentioned breaking news out of Carolina, and then we didn't get into it because we got into our big philosophical discussion about wide receivers, tight ends, and quarterbacks in the league, especially in these playoffs. And it has to be mentioned that Panthers GM Dan Morgan this morning is saying that Carolina does plan to pick up the 5th-year option on Bryce Young. there's two ways you can go about looking at that. One is, yes, Bryce Young over the last year plus has shown some glimpses. But more than likely, he's not a dude, I don't think, who's ever going to enter that upper echelon of quarterbacks. I think we can see that now at this point. I was a huge believer, I'll own it, a huge believer in Bryce Young coming out, and he just hasn't shown it. He hasn't. And this is more proof that if there were a better quarterback market out there, maybe the Panthers would look around a little bit, but quarterback market is not good. Between free agency and the draft, it's downright underwhelming. It is. It's just a bunch of dudes. Tua, Kyler, Malik Willis, and then beyond Mendoza in the draft, what are we talking about? Dante Moore, a lot of people are still high on, but you're probably going to have to be drafting in the top 10 to get more. So if you're a team that's not drafting top 10 and feels like you may be a quarterback away, it's a huge piece to be missing. But if you're just a quarterback away, you're not finding them this offseason. Short of something massive happening, you're not finding that quarterback this offseason. And I do still think in the back of my head, there's a wonder about how much noise Joe Burrow was making towards the end of the year about being unhappy. But, I mean, even the Bengals wouldn't do that, right? They wouldn't screw that up, would they? I don't know. It's the Bengals. We probably shouldn't hold our breath for them to make prudent decisions at this point. If you're betting on the divisional round, though, best way to do it is in the BetMGM app. BetMGM players are going to get an any sport parlay boost token to start the new year off, right? To use that parlay boost token and score a bigger payout, all you got to do, put together a parlay inside your BetMGM app, any sports, and then activate the token. You win that wager that has the token activated, the parlay boost, you're going to get extra winnings all inside your BetMGM app. Download the BetMGM app today. Please play responsibly. As for first impressions on the divisional round, I think the most interesting game is the first one. Saturday afternoon in Denver. Another short week for the Bills. And the line on this one, look, it's all right around a pick to a point and a half, but it really is all over both sides. At some places, you're going to get Buffalo laying the point and a half. At other places, you're going to get Buffalo getting the point and a half. Even at BetMGM, it's oscillating back and forth right now between 1 point on either side to either Buffalo or Denver, which again, essentially makes it a pick'em. And then you go look at the money line odds, and everything is right in that minus 110 to minus 115 neighborhood on either side. It's about as close a game as you have this weekend. I tend to believe that if Josh Allen isn't seriously hampered by the litany of injuries that he's suffering at this point, Buffalo wins that game. They go into Denver and take care of business. San Francisco, I mentioned laying the 7.5 is interesting, even without Kittle. If you could get me a hook on the Texans, I'd be interested, but right now it's at 3. And the Rams laying 3.5 at Chicago. I'm not touching with your money because, well, the Bears, anything's possible at this point. All that said, let's get to your 3 stars of the day. And like I said, we had 3 fantastic guests on today, each of them with some insights on the biggest stories of the day, starting with college football and Brooks Austin on what exactly Miami's offense can do against Indiana.
3. They can make this a 30-tote Mark Fletcher football game. They can do that. If you haven't seen this Miami running back, you're going to find out. He's 6'2.5", 230 pounds, and he runs downhill.
Yeah, a bowling ball with razor blades. Brooks Austin was amazing. Go find it inside the podcast. Download You Better You Bet for his full takeaways on Miami, Indiana. Number 2.
I think the Texans defense is the best unit left in the playoffs. It was the best unit in the playoffs when we started the playoffs. It's absolutely awesome. I mean, for everybody who's saying, oh, Josh Allen, this is his year, he's going to make a Super Bowl. I watched that game. I think it was week 12. It was a Thursday night. Destroyed Josh Allen in that game.
Yeah, Frank Schwab of Yahoo Sports on the Texans defense. Can they go into Foxborough and do to Drake May what they did to Aaron Rodgers? May's a lot more mobile, but that New England offense isn't exactly high octane. Under 40.5. I'm all over it in that game. And our top star of the day.
12 hours ago, I think you asked pretty much anybody associated of being a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, they would have said, yes, we want Rodgers back. That's how important he's been to this organization this year. Not only the way he's played, he showed that he still has some left in the tank.
Yeah, I don't know how much gas is left in that tank after this year, though, in particular, that beating he took last night. Steelers insider Mark Cabali of the Pat McAfee Show and the Cabali and Mac Show as well on Aaron Rodgers, and the idea that maybe, just maybe, the Steelers bang their head off the cinder block wall one more time and run it back with Tomlin and Rodgers in what could be the final year of Mike Tomlin's contract. I think more than likely Aaron Rodgers is probably done. I'm Chris Mack. Thanks to each and every one of yins, as we say, for joining us here today on You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM. Nick back tomorrow. Thanks to Dan Turner, Mike Brown, Kenny Henderson, Tyler Morales, Bill Zimmerman, Bleck and Abdallah up next right here on Westwood One Sports.
The thing I am adding to the list this week, Alex, something that's kind of bothered me a lot. And it's a phrase that we use in sports way too often. It's the phrase 110%. Go out there and give it 110%. Go out there and give it your all. You hear it all the time. Give it 110%. First of all, guys, that's mathematically impossible. Unless you're my car's gas gauge that one night in college, you're not giving it 110%. The people who say 110% are like the same people that say gazillion, or like the people that say 100 and go out and give it 110%. They're the people in the corporate world that use words like synergy, right? The people that use the phrase go out and give it 110% probably subscribe to all of David Goggins' podcasts. I just think it is time we lay to rest the give it 110%. All right. Okay. Now, look, let's say hypothetically you could actually give it 110%. We work in sports talk radio. We live on hypotheticals, right? Hypothetically, if 110% is attainable, why stop at 110%? Why not give 150%? Why not give 368%? Why not give 971%? Why are we stopping at 110? Who came up with that number? Just give it 100%. Go all out. You cannot give 110%. And if you can, why aren't you giving more?